Hey guys, it's Jess from Misfortune Astrology. How's everybody doing? Back from the jewelry studio during nap time, which was hard fought today, to wrap up this series on what the fuck is up with the world, part 3. In this part, we're going to be talking about Pluto. Now, if you've been following along, in the first video, I discussed that I believe there are 3 culprits that are largely responsible for the state of the world right now, and they are Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto. I spent the first 2 videos really talking and taking apart the Saturn and Jupiter cycle that's going on right now, and haven't really spent a whole lot of time on Pluto. I saved him for last. And you know, he's in there, he's in Capricorn. He's definitely part of all of this, but his role is slightly different. Jupiter and Saturn are largely cycling with each other. Pluto's kind of an outlier. He's standing alone, but he is in fact going through his own cycle, which is very specific to the United States. So I'm going to get into some of that and hopefully tie together how all of these various cycles are kind of converging at the same moment in time here, and you know, are basically responsible for everything that we see around us right now. Again, just breaking it down into the most basic parts, Pluto represents death and destruction, power and control. So mostly when we see Pluto transiting to something in our personal natal chart, the death that we're referring to is usually metaphorical, right? Most of the time it's metaphorical. However, Pluto can actually signify real death here in the physical plane. It is not uncommon during times like now. You know, he stations and retrogrades for about half of the year every year. So his retrogrades happen usually around April through October. And so, you know, he just stationed a retrograde yesterday, and it is not uncommon when he starts to slow down for us to see spikes in deaths. And I think I mentioned this during one of the earlier videos, so I won't go into it too terribly much now, but, you know, not a coincidence that we are seeing, you know, COVID deaths peaking right around now. You know, he is retrograde now. He should start to back off. Hopefully we will see a decline. However, it would not surprise me, you know, if when he spins to go direct again in October, you know, they're already talking about a second wave. And so it'll be interesting to see if that second wave coincides with Pluto's station to direct motion again in the fall. My son's right above me. Okay, so Pluto has been transiting through Capricorn since 2008, and he's going to be there until 2024. So that's a 16-year transit, approximately 16-year transit, to go 30 degrees. So you do the math on how slow Pluto actually moves through the signs. He takes just under 250 years to orbit around the whole zodiac. He has a very wildly elliptical orbit, which means that he does not spend an equal amount of time in each sign like the other planets do. For example, Jupiter is in each sign for almost exactly a year. You know, there's really very little variation in that theme unless he goes retrograde every year, so there really is very little variation there. But Pluto, not so much, right? So he's spending about 16 years in Capricorn. He spent 12 years when he went through Scorpio. He spent like 26 years when he was in Cancer last. So, you know, I mean, again, with a 250 year orbit time, clearly nobody alive has ever experienced a full cycle of Pluto. And in fact, we only just discovered him, I think it was like about 90 years ago. It was 1930, actually on my birthday, in 1930. So, you know, we don't have a ton of experience with Pluto, all together. However, you know, we have enough experience to know that he means business. And, you know, no matter what NASA says about his planetary status or non-planetary status, as the case may be, ignoring Pluto from an astrological standpoint is a big no-no. So again, humans do not experience Pluto returns. However, countries do. Right? We can, in astrology, you know, just the same way that we chart people, we can chart the birth of nations, and we can chart events. So astrologers largely use the date of July 4th, 1776, and they even have a specific time. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I pulled the chart when I was doing the research for this. And, you look at it very similar to the way you would look at a birth chart. It's not a person, but it is very much something that has, the values are very strongly reflected through the chart the same way that they would be in a human being. So the United States, just so you know, the big three of the United States, she's got a Cancer sun, an Aquarius moon, and I think she's Sagittarius rising. And she's got a pretty packed 8th house, if I remember correctly. So basically what we're looking at here, Pluto, at the time the United States was born, if you will, Pluto is at 27 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so Pluto has now come almost full circle from that date, from where he was when the United States was born. The actual return of Pluto to 27 degrees will occur from February of 2022 through October of 2023. And he's not going to stay at 27 degrees that whole time. He is, of course, going to move back and forth very slowly. But that is when we're looking at it. So, we're not there yet. However, we are very much in range. Oh my God, he's going to do this to me now. He's in range, and we're feeling it. We really are feeling it. Now, like I said, Pluto rules power, control, death, destruction. When he transits over something in someone's natal chart, you feel it, right? It's nasty. You experience a complete transformation of the way that energy, whatever it is that he's transiting over, you experience a complete transformation of the way that energy shows up in your life. It's very, very uncomfortable. But it's a lot like pulling the Tower card in the tarot, right? The Tower card shows up when there's something in your life that is, way past its expiration date and needs to be destroyed. And the discomfort that comes with destroying it comes, basically from the fact that human beings do not like change all that much. We love to hang on to dead stuff. And Pluto says no. Pluto says absolutely not. The things that are dead belong down here in the underworld with me. And if you're not willing to let go of them willingly, then he will take them from you by force. So when he completes a cycle and returns to a degree, it's basically what we see as a complete cycle of birth through death. And that is what the United States is approaching right now. It's like any other planetary cycle, as I've discussed in the prior two videos, where, when the cycle kicks off, when the United States was born back in 1776, we were born of revolution. We were born from a revolution. And so, there's something very Uranian about that energy. There was no doubt that there was plenty of momentum, plenty of wind at the back of the United States at the time that it was born. However, at this point, coming full circle on a Pluto, a Pluto cycle, Pluto's at the end. Pluto's at the tail end now, and just like we see with the tail end of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, both the Great Conjunction cycle and the Great Mutation cycle, chaos is here because Pluto can't hold on anymore. So what do we see? Well, we see, Pluto and Capricorn. Capricorn rules government structures and Pluto rules death, right? That's basically what we're seeing. Pluto can't, he can't reign in the government anymore. The government has run amok with power, and, now it's up to Pluto to kind of come in and dig up the dead things and get them to go away. Saturn has had quite a bit to say about this, right? So Saturn's pass through Capricorn during this same time is pretty interesting because under normal circumstances, if Pluto wasn't here, Saturn would have come through Capricorn and he really would have shored up our government systems. That would have been kind of the very natural progression of Saturn passing through Capricorn. The problem is that Saturn can't do that, has not been able to do that because Pluto is now into the third decan of Capricorn. He has dug up almost the entire sign. And so there's nothing really that Saturn can do. Saturn is all about building structure, but you can't build structure when the foundation has been completely dug up, right? Like there's nothing to build it on, right? There needs to be basically a new foundation system put in place, and we're not there yet. Pluto's not done digging. Pluto's going to be here for a while. Yet, we still have another 4 years of this transit. So nothing can really take root, and we're, as Americans, kind of seeing that. So in the birth chart for the United States, Pluto is actually in the second house. Second house is naturally ruled by Taurus. It is all about resources, personal values, tangible and intangible, right? This is kind of a common theme, right? Money is a big thing in the second house. It's not the only thing, but second house is definitely considered a money house. And so, in terms of our economy and everything else that's going on, seeing Pluto here, again, not at all surprising that, we are having all kinds of economic issues. We have been having all kinds of economic issues basically since, again, not a coincidence that Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008 when the housing market collapsed. And it's just been kind of one thing after another in terms of our economy. And make no mistake about it, right? The United States is broke as fuck, right? It's really, it's amazing to me to see how we still manage to keep borrowing and borrowing against the future, to the tune of trillions of dollars, right? And as if, if there is some reserve of gold or silver or whatever money is supposed to be backed by, if we have trillions of dollars worth of silver sitting somewhere, then I question why homelessness is a thing. I don't see it. I think that, the United States has been playing fast and loose with our money system for a long time. And it's about to come back to bite us. Now, I'm not, fuck it, I'll just say it because everybody thinks I'm a conspiracy nut anyway. But, more and more medical data keeps coming out about this virus that really just kind of suggests that the whole shutdown of the economy, as well-intentioned as it might have been, does not seem to be supported by scientific data, yet we persist with it. And we persist with it basically with the full knowledge that the economy will collapse. Now, I think will be interesting to see, who ends up getting blamed, right? I think it's really convenient for the powers that be if the vast majority of humanity can look back and kind of blame the virus for the collapse of the economy, United States and otherwise, when the reality is that Pluto and the planetary action that's been going on, through Capricorn for a really long time now suggests that this was inevitable anyway, and maybe the people in power are smart enough to try to get human beings to kind of point fingers at each other, as opposed to making them actually take responsibility for for the mess that we find ourselves in now. But if it's not already collapsed and the band-aid approach is not being applied, make no mistake about it, like I said, the collapse is imminent, and Pluto's not going to stop until he's done destroying everything, because it's all dead and it can't, it just can't hold on any longer. Compounding some of these issues is the fact that the United States, like I said, was born during Cancer season. So there's a pretty large stellium in Cancer at the time the United States was born. She's got Venus at 3 degrees of Cancer, Jupiter's at 5 degrees of Cancer, her sun is at 13 degrees of Cancer, and Mercury is at 24 degrees of Cancer. So since 2008, Pluto has been absolutely pillaging and plundering all of these planets one by one, with oppositions. Now, if you've ever, and most people have gone through at least one Pluto opposition in their life. I've been through a couple. I'm actually in the middle of one right now, that's going to last for another year or so. And they're brutal. The good thing about them is because Pluto moves so slowly, they unfold over time, and so it's not like intense every day, and a lot of it you don't even really recognize as such as you're going through it, but then you kind of look back and you can be like, wow, okay, I'm a completely different person in one specific energetic area of my life, and it's not happy, right? You're okay on the other side of it, you now have like fresh earth to kind of build on again, but at the time that you're going through it, it just feels very, very unnerving. Paranoia is very high when Pluto is around. And so, again, we see that in everyday society right now, right? Nobody trusts anything. And there are other planetary indications that we're kind of right to not trust anything. But Pluto rules fear. And, we are all being ruled by fear, or at least they are attempting to rule us by fear. For those who are not resisting that or not actively understanding it, you're playing right into their hands. And, and I'm crazy for saying that, but I'll keep saying it, right? Pluto has, since 2008, he has slowly but steadily and ruthlessly torn down the value system of the United States. That's Venus. Our faith, that's Jupiter. Our spirit, that's the sun. And now, he's in, I think he's at about 25 degrees now. He's going to retrograde back to like 23, I think. And now he's going after our information systems, right? Mercury at 24 Cancer is right in range of where Pluto is right now. And all of this is in the lead up to his big showdown, which is when he cycles back to 27 and hits the spot where he was when the United States was born. Now, again, we've never experienced a Pluto return as a nation. And the truth is that very few countries have. I went back and tried to find some examples of countries that had lasted long enough in a consistent form to find, an example of Pluto returns, and the pickings are very slim. The death and destruction of the country genuinely starts to happen long before the Pluto cycle is up. A lot of them don't make it past that third, the kind of third leg of the Pluto journey. The ones that have, I believe, I think Spain at one point was probably pretty close. But these countries, they experience a transformation, and, either their leaders die, and, or, the government system is completely transformed somehow. Revolutions occur, that's the Iranian influence. If he's got anything to do with it, which he has, right? Uranus and Pluto were just squaring each other not too long ago. They hit 7 times over the course of a few years, so it was pretty nasty. And sometimes it takes a little while for the people to catch on and ignite that kind of thing. But, all of the dominoes are kind of in line, and I don't think it's going to take very much to knock them over. So, not a whole heck of a lot to say about the whole Pluto return thing in comparison to the Saturn and Jupiter cycle that I talked about. However, I would, the lesser amount of information is not any indication of it being less important. This Pluto cycle is huge. The fact that it is converging with the Saturn and Jupiter stuff is also huge. There's so very much here that it is really hard to kind of draw the lines of where one issue is kind of starting and the next issue is stopping. It's all overlapping. We are all feeling it as a collective. A lot of us are feeling it in our personal lives as well. These 3 planets, Saturn is in Aquarius right now in the first couple degrees, but he's coming back to Capricorn. He's going to spend the bulk of 2020 in Capricorn. They're all going to continue to be connecting and conjoining and activating these same crucial degrees in the third decan of Capricorn. This area of Capricorn is an absolute hotbed of activity and has been since January and will continue to be for the vast majority of this year. We started in January 2020 with all of the planets direct, which is a nice way to start. But now, we've had some pullback. Like I said, Mercury went retrograde. Venus is in her shadow now. All of the personal planets are retrograding this year, which is another kick in the ass, which I should probably do a video on too. But everything was forward from January to now. But now that stops, right? Pluto went retrograde yesterday. Saturn and Jupiter are basically stationed now. So everything has stopped. The world has stopped. That's not a coincidence, right? Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, these 3 culprits are all essentially still in the sky at this point and will remain so for a while. Pluto's not actually going to move. I mean, he's technically retrograde now, but he's not actually going to move off of the degree he's on for months. He really doesn't move very fast. And, he's retrograde from April 25th through October 4th. He's at 25 degrees. He's going to go back to 22. Saturn goes next on May 11th. He's going to be retrograde from May 11th through September 29th. He's going to backtrack from just about 2 degrees of Aquarius back through 25 degrees of Capricorn, same place that Pluto's at now. And Jupiter's right on his heels, on Saturn's heels. He's going to retrograde from May 14th through September 12th. Yep. And he's going to backtrack 10 degrees. He'll be at 27. He's at 27, about 27 right now of Capricorn. He's going to go back to 17. So all of these degrees are going to be revisited. We're going to see a retreat of some sort before it's all systems a go, basically come September, October, when everything starts to move direct again. So, I cautioned this before. Don't be surprised if we see some sort of retreat by our leaders. We're already seeing some states being, talking about opening up and the backlash from that. I do kind of anticipate that there'll be an attempt to return to normalcy, but it's ill-timed. And the reason it's ill-timed is because these 3 Titans are going to be retrograde. So, you know, going back to what was, as much as that is kind of the natural inclination of retrograde energy, there has been so much death and destruction and, you know, transmutation, transformation in this area that there's really nothing for us to go back to. It's going to be all about the push forward to whatever the new normal is going to be, which will ultimately be determined when these guys get into Aquarius, you know, at the end of this year. So, you know, and even then, I don't want to make it sound like, you know, there's some definite end date for everything. It's, you know, these things, planetary cycles, especially ones like this that are so like long, you know, they take years sometimes to kind of settle out. And, you know, we're talking, I mean, the 20-year cycle of Saturn and Jupiter should be, you know, should settle out relatively quickly or relative to the other 2 cycles. But the Great Mutation, a 200-year cycle, I mean, you know, I'm not going to be able to say to you like, oh yeah, by January of next year, that's going to calm down. Like, no, we've been seeing bullshit from that since, you know, since the early 80s. So, you know, that's 40 years ago. You know, it could be quite a while before we see that calm down. And you know, this 250-year cycle of Pluto, like, honestly, God only knows what that's going to bring. But, you know, it's big, and you chose to be here for it. So do your part, you know, whatever that was, you know, whatever you decided for yourself on a soul level, you know, you're here for a reason. You're here to help the collective and kind of see it through, you know, see us through all of this. So, you know, do your best to stay well, stay healthy, you know, stay out of that fear center if you can. They're doing everything that they can, and the Pluto energy is very strong right now. So paranoia is very strong, fear is very strong. You know, it takes a lot of meditation and, you know, the best healthy living that you can possibly muster to stay out of that. It's, you know, it'll make all the difference in the world for everybody going forward. So for those of you who've stuck with me through 3 videos now, I really do appreciate it. I'm probably going to make this kind of a regular thing because I've gotten a lot of really good feedback. So do stay tuned and do stay well. Thanks, guys.